invite the members of the Authority Board to come up and field that question.
The question that was asked was the California voters approved a proposition that had, excuse me, I'm sorry. The question was asked that the California voters had approved a proposition in 2008 that had specific time requirements to go from Los Angeles to San Francisco. We knew that we could meet that under the $98 billion plan. How does this new plan relate to that? The reason that we are confident that the blended approach system, which costs $30 billion less, can work is that our engineers have told us that it will achieve the performance standards that the voters insisted on in the ballot measure. And so that means trains that can go from Los Angeles Union Station to the Transbay Terminal in San Francisco in 2 hours, 40 minutes. Those trains must be able to hit speeds of 220 miles an hour. We must have that system electrified, and that system must operate without an operating subsidy from the taxpayers or the bondholders. And this plan will achieve those standards. Other questions? Okay, Tim's question was that we talk about making improvements to the San Joaquin's lines, the other Amtrak lines, and what kind of improvements would those be? The bond measure in 2008 included monies for interconnectivity with systems that would connect to the high-speed rail system. There was $190 million in that bond measure for Amtrak-level service. The San Joaquin service, which is a very popular service, it is now the 5th busiest Amtrak corridor in the United States. And I was told the other day in Kern County that they understand that there's been 16 consecutive months of ridership growth on the San Joaquin service. That service is run by Caltrans. Caltrans runs it, and they contract the operation of it to Amtrak. And it is a vital service here in the valley. So while we're building to the south, the kind of improvements that will go into the San Joaquins will be the addition of positive train controls, better protection for crossings where roads and the trains interact. And my friend Karen Hedlund from Federal Railroad Administration can talk about this as well, but under federal law, those kind of improvements would allow the regulated speeds to increase from 79 miles an hour today to 90 miles an hour under federal regulations, if I got that correct. That's correct. So those kinds of improvements, we'll see some good reductions in time, and the ACE train system has been very popular from San Jose over to Stockton, and these will be immediate improvements for the people in this region. Ms. Hedlund.
Across the country, we have passenger trains running on and sharing right-of-way with freight trains. And we are trying to make improvements to the lines of our freight rail partners to benefit passenger rail without taking anything away from freight rail. It's too critical to the economy. So to get technical with you, the kinds of improvements that go in are things that will help speed passenger rail and get the passenger trains out of the way of the freight trains and vice versa. And this can be things as simple as crossings, sidings, some double tracking or triple tracking in places, those kinds of investments that don't look and sound very sexy, but in fact can mean a measurable improvement of time and reduction in delays.
Yes, sir. The question was, how does the new plan affect the environment? I'm sorry. Excuse me. The question was, how does the new plan affect the environmental review process, and is it going to push it back? Are we looking for any CEQA exemptions or streamlining? And the answer is that this plan is really separate from the environmental review process. This plan is a roadmap for the California legislature as to how we would ultimately build high-speed rail. the environmental review process here in the valley is underway, and we've also begun the environmental review process down the line to the next step, which is a very vital step of connecting Bakersfield to Palmdale, closing the most important rail gap in the state, and that environmental work is underway as well. Despite some of the recent reports, we are not looking for CEQA exemptions. We are doing a full environmental review process. There are some technical issues involved with the blended service, but those are pretty straightforward to work out. So this plan is really separate from the environmental review process, which is on its own course. Yes, sir. The initial operating segment, the question was, for the initial operating segment to head to the south, are we talking about from here to Palmdale, to Sylmar, or to Burbank? And I guess I would say yes. The initial operating segment will connect the Central Valley with the San Fernando Valley. It will go across the Tehachapis, through Palmdale, and down into the San Fernando Valley. The environmental work will tell us whether that terminates in Sylmar or Burbank. Frankly, more people know where Burbank is than Sylmar, so we've been using that as a shorthand. But it will basically connect into the San Fernando Valley. And let me just say one thing about this. The structures that we build across the Tehachapis are going to be an engineering marvel. It will connect us to the Southland in the only way possible with rail, which is with electrified high-speed rail climbing up to 5,000 feet over those mountains through a series of viaducts and tunnels. It's going to be a very important, critical connection for our state. Other questions? Yes, ma'am. Excuse me. Hold on one second. I didn't hear your last part over the loudspeaker. Can I talk about cap and trade funding, and what was the last part? The question was, could I talk about cap and trade funding and whether it's legally permissible? I'm not an expert on cap and trade funding, but cap and trade is a legally constituted program in California, and the use of cap and trade proceeds for high-speed rail has been anticipated and talked about. It's been included in the in that program as it's been developed, and so it is an available funding source for us. Other questions? Yeah. The question was, how much is the average ticket going to cost from Merced to Los Angeles? I'm not sure I have that answer right now, Mr. Rossi. We don't know. But I will tell you this. In our plan, what we're looking at is that from Los Angeles to San Francisco, in today's dollars, we're looking at about $81 or $83 a ticket. So it'll be one way. So from here, it'll be somewhat less than that. And I came down on the San Joaquins last night. It cost me $41 from Sacramento to Fresno on the San Joaquins, and so I imagine it's probably going to be in that range. But I don't know for sure right at the moment. Other questions from the press? The mayor?